As we all know, the US has suffered a terrible past about the country being so racist. Way back to slavery, and now until the discrimination of people and all around the country. So there are two different types of people that are affected in all this. There are the white supremacists and the minorities, which are actually the people of color, or the African American, as you may call them. So all of this reflects to back into the terrible past, but it doesn't actually change. The actual struggle in the society is in the judicial system and the justice that is served. So some people think that racism is over, but still, people of color have a disadvantage when it comes to the judicial systems, and all because of prejudice, because the government involves it. So the conflict is from the society. It could still be developing, you know. So the people that are now are assumed as being criminals only because of their color. So it's more because of the probable cause. And if a white cop, let's say, that goes against the all of the black people, he's ready to judge someone by its color and get him arrested. This all heads into the difference of how people are treated. So as you know, it starts off with a person committing a crime, then a probable cause to make it the cop arrest someone. So if the cop arrests that person, it could be because he thinks he's doing something wrong or because he's actually doing something wrong. So sometimes it gets affected because of the black people. So let's say the profile of a black people is usually due to their skin color or due to their background or like their record there. So there has been a lot of issues of prejudice and discrimination in government towards black people. For example, as we know, the percentage of the 2019 judicial systems in federal court is 73 to 30 to 37% from white workers to black workers. So we can assume how that affects all of them, because like it's not an equal share whenever it comes to judging. Maybe black people or white people don't have all the prejudice, but usually we can see like a trend in white people judging the black people. So secondly, you may say that people think that it's a fair system, but it's actually not. Whenever it comes to the court, there is a procedure which allows the lawyer to eliminate people from and it has to be accepted as long as there's a bias or something that is found that will affect the court case. So most of that procedure, which is called the Bernard procedure, it affects the black people, because if in the jury we have the same amount of black and white people, the lawyer can say that only because someone is black, he's gonna have bias against the case, and it usually eliminates all the black people and leaving them with a huge bias of the white people. So this is completely unfair, and there have been a lot of cases founded on the unfairness of that because of discriminating someone in the court case only because their race or color. And there should be a blind spot in which how you choose, you know, like there should be glasses that examine how you judge someone. It has to be more based on facts and based on their past and what they have done, disregarding their family, their race, or any kind of like their siblings. Like you have to judge a person as how they are and not like who they're with or their color or their background, where they were born, because everybody has the right to be good and be judged. So, and that goes back to the law of independence and Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration, which states that everybody should have a fair court case, and that is violated sometimes, mostly in the court. And it's not only violated against white people, but mostly against the discrimination of black people. So there's a really big injustice here. So let me tell you a story. There's a case. The case, his name was Mart, and he was sent to jail, and it is believed he served the life sentence, and it is believed that there was a murder in the town, and the cops needed someone to find him guilty for, and they picked a random uh, black person, arrested him, and he is now serving a life sentence. Now that the years passed, this was back in 1998. Now that the years passed, and like there was more liberal movements and the elimination of race, we can see how uh, they reopened the case, giving new opportunity for the families that suffered and to be so. I think it's really unfair, and it's a problem that is to be dealt with at all costs, because the jury, a biased jury, has the life of families and people in their hands. And imagine if you're sent to jail and your family is left there without money or food only because of racial discrimination and the unableness to defend a just system. And let's not talk about how the opportunities of the black people. Maybe the black people in education, they could be there's a higher rates, but only in the sports. And usually the sports is not the same as the education or colleges that people are accepted to by discrimination. So there's a huge disadvantage, and it all connects, right? If you don't have the enough amount of money when you're going against white supremacists, let's say, uh, you may not have the same opportunities or the good lawyer that went to a good college, and it all heads back. It's just like a cycle of white people having better opportunities and letting down all the other discriminating, and it's a very unjust and unfair system. And I think that this should be resolved, and that this would not only bring the justice, but it will bring peace in the whole country of the United States, and it will start moving the charts of the percentages in which white people are having jobs, and the opportunities, the schools they get to go to, and the money they have, the loans they get. This is a perfect example, and it gets back to one last example that I want to show you all. So back in 1984, there was this. They just made a movie about it. It's called The Banker. I don't know if anyone has seen it, but it's about African American who lived in Texas, and he was a very smart guy. He started off as a kid cleaning white people bankers' shoes, and he just peeked and tried to understand the banking. And he went on to his dad, and Dad, I found the formulas. We can start doing this, and we could make a lot of money. And his dad told him, I wish I could, but they were not in the place. So this is exactly. And then he grew up to be a very smart person. So first he started doing real estate, and it was very, very hard for people of color to be successful at that time. So he moved on to Los Angeles and started real estate, partnering up with another black guy, and they start buying a lot of buildings. But they didn't buy them by going. They had to get a white guy that was their friend, and teach him to do business. But they were actually the owners and the payers. So they were kind of like juking the system, which is a corrupt system because it didn't give it an equal chance. So once they got all their money and fortune, they were up here, and the guy, he didn't want to keep making money. He wanted to make a movement, and that's when he decided to go back in Texas, a country that was known for their racism and their lack of opportunities in the areas of African American people. So he tried to buy a bank, and then the white people there started to know that they started to retire their loans, their money. They were going all against it, and then he was charged for fraud. Once he was charged for fraud, they were both sent to jail. All their money was confiscated, and they had to start over. They served 5 years in prison each, but thanks to God, they lived their lives and went on. But it's almost the same as what we're looking at here. At that time, it was more direct. It was like, it's fraud if an African American is buying something from you, but this time it's different because it's more playing like with their lives. Like whenever they got going back to the story, when they got sentenced to prison, the whole jury was white, and they were all involved in banking. So that's technically the bias I'm talking, and I think it's something that should be left behind because it's unfair, and the country is proceeding and there should be no racism at all. And once we achieve this, to like look at someone for what they do, what they are, disregarding their race, I think the country will be more fair and there will be a lot of peace worldwide.